Caen, a city with deep historical roots in Normandy, was a center of commerce and military activity in the 15th century, but it was also surrounded by vast, dense forests. The early 1400s were a difficult time for France, marked by the Hundred Years' War between England and France, which had left the countryside ravaged. Famine, disease, and the collapse of local governance made life harsh for many rural communities.
Wolves were common in the forests of Europe, including those surrounding Caen. Normally, they posed little threat to humans, preferring to prey on wild animals and occasionally livestock. However, as the war and harsh winters depleted food supplies, both human and animal populations suffered, and wolves were forced to adapt. When their natural prey became scarce, some wolves turned to more accessible food sources, livestock and, in rare but terrifying cases, humans.
The wolves of Caen first attracted attention during one particularly brutal winter, when reports surfaced of livestock being killed at an alarming rate. Farmers began finding their sheep and cattle slaughtered, with little left behind but bones. While wolf attacks on livestock were not unheard of, the frequency and ferocity of these attacks suggested that a particularly aggressive pack had moved into the area. Soon, the wolves' hunger drove them to take bolder and more dangerous actions. Villagers reported seeing wolves lurking on the outskirts of Caen, and it wasn't long before the wolves began attacking people. The wolves of Caen became man-eaters, dragging their victims into the woods, leaving only grisly remains. Women, children, and laborers working alone in the fields were particularly vulnerable to these attacks. The wolves grew increasingly brazen, venturing closer to the town itself and striking fear into the hearts of the population. The attacks caused widespread panic in Caen and the surrounding villages. People were too afraid to leave their homes at night, and farmers stopped tending to their livestock without armed escorts. The wolves of Caen had become the embodiment of the wilderness's danger, an ever-present threat that could strike at any moment.
The people of Caen were not equipped to deal with the deadly pack of wolves that was ravaging their community. Local authorities, recognizing the severity of the problem, organized hunts to track and kill the wolves. These hunts were led by skilled hunters, soldiers, and local volunteers, all determined to rid the region of the predatory threat. Despite their best efforts, the hunts proved ineffective at first. The wolves were elusive and cunning, retreating deep into the forests after each attack, and using the dense underbrush to avoid detection. They were familiar with the terrain and had learned to avoid traps and human settlements during the day. The fear and frustration among the townspeople grew, and rumors began to circulate that these were no ordinary wolves. Some believed the wolves were cursed, sent by malevolent forces to punish the region. As the death toll mounted, the hunts intensified. Priests blessed the hunters before they set out, and local nobility offered rewards for the heads of the wolves. Finally, after weeks of tireless hunting, a breakthrough came. One of the hunting parties managed to track the wolves to their den, hidden deep in the forest. What followed was a tense and bloody confrontation. The hunters cornered the pack and engaged in a fierce battle. Armed with spears, bows, and swords, they fought off the wolves as the animals made desperate attempts to escape. After a brutal struggle, the hunters killed several of the wolves, including what was believed to be the alpha male, a large and particularly vicious wolf that had led the pack during the attacks. The bodies of the slain wolves were brought back to Caen, and the townspeople celebrated their victory over the terrifying predators.
The death of the wolves brought a sense of relief to the region, and the immediate threat was eliminated. However, the memory of the wolves of Caen and the terror they had inflicted on the local population lingered for years. The attacks left deep psychological scars on the people of Caen, reinforcing the age-old fear of wolves that had persisted across Europe for centuries. The wolves of Caen became part of local folklore, their story passed down through generations as a warning of the dangers that lay in the forests beyond the town. The events also contributed to the growing perception of wolves as malevolent creatures, a fear that would eventually lead to the widespread hunting and near extinction of wolves in many parts of Europe. While the story of the wolves of Caen ended with their defeat, it also highlighted the challenges faced by communities living on the edge of civilization. In a time when human populations were encroaching on wild habitats, and with the added strain of war and famine, conflicts between humans and wildlife were inevitable. The wolves of Caen, though extraordinary in their brutality, were also a product of their environment, forced to adapt to a changing world.
The wolves of Caen represent one of the most chilling examples of human-wildlife conflict in medieval France. Their story serves as a reminder of the thin line between civilization and the untamed wilderness that once surrounded it. While the wolves may have been defeated, the fear they instilled in the people of Caen had a lasting impact, shaping the way wolves were viewed for generations to come. Today, the tale of the wolves of Caen remains part of the region's rich folklore, a testament to the dangers that once lurked in the shadows of the forest.